Hello, and welcome to another Precision Flyer Repairs video. This one is about a 332 from 1949, designed and manufactured to only run on DC, that was sent to me from a customer. And as you'll see, it has a knuckle coupler on it. That's per the customer's request, but originally it did have the link coupler as it would have come from the factory with. This again is DC only. This does not have the universal motor that so many other Gilbert steam engines and diesels came with. This came with only a motor capable to be run with DC. It has a permanent magnet, not a coil wound field. And it needed work. It had a lot of congealed, practically solidified old grease and lubricants keeping the drivetrain from moving. And then I was also able to detect that the armature was amiss. It has the right XA10476 2 and 9/32 inch shaft length armature, but it should measure 2.7 ohms segment to segment between the three segments that are wound on the armature, and two of the segments measured 2 ohms and one of it measured 1.4. So fortunately, I had another XA10476 armature, which is a DC specific armature, an early one. There was a later one as well, but that was a couple 32nds of an inch longer shaft actually. And it had no signs of troughing on the commutators or cupping between them. And it measured 2.7 segment to segment between the three segments very uniformly. And so I was happy to be able to transplant that one into this engine for the customer. And you know, I think it turned out well. We'll take it around and give it a spin and let you see and make your mind up on that. But it is DC. Now my layout is optimized for AC operations. I have the air chime whistle set up to test the add and diesel horns. I have a voltmeter for AC set up to test the at railhead voltage for either loop. I can select that with the selector switch, and that tells me the voltage at the railhead while an engine is running. And so I don't have DC really integrally made part of that normal setup, but I do run DC to test customer strains because I believe very firmly in doing more than just testing them at the bench, where I can test AC, DC, DCC, just all kinds of different operating systems. But on the layout is where you really see what an engine is going to be like in real life use, and that's why I find it very important not to make any exception to that. And so for DC operations, I do modify things a little bit. I set up this Lionel. Yeah, I know, blasphemy, Lionel, but they actually made some very good things too, you know. And this is a KW, and on the back of it, I have a bridge rectifier, and off of it then leads that go to the track. And then my normally inner loop insulated from each other, outer and inner loops are connected, so I can just drive both with one control, the right control off the KW. Then I have a voltmeter because I do like to see what that at the railhead while running voltage is like, to see how much I'm having to apply. And then I also connect the inner loops, inner rail of both loops here as well. And so then I turn the AC voltmeter to a position that does not have it connected to either the lower or higher or outer or inner loops anymore. And then also take out the fast blow fuses. And of course, just for good measure, I have the air chime whistle out of the circuitry completely. So the AC power source, the trusty 30B, I think arguably the best, at least for S-gauge operation purposes, AC transformer ever built is a Gilbert 30B, assuming that it's kept in good tune with proper contact pressures inside and rollers and all the things that it needs to stay in good shape. Now why do I have the 30B turned on? Well, I have the 30B turned on because I can still use the 30B to operate the switches on the layout. That's powered separately from any track power using the accessory constant AC voltage off the 30B. So why cut myself short of being able to use the 30B to drive my switches? Okay, well, let's just get this going. The one thing I don't like about the KW is it does not have an on-off switch. It has nice little directional buttons here. You can change direction right there on the transformer with the push of a button. I've run universal motor engines on this with the KW. In fact, this same customer sent me a 313. It needed extensive work. It's running sprightly now and doing very well, but he runs strictly DC at home. So I think it's only fair to test it under the conditions of what he operates. So I've run it under AC and then also just tested it with DC, and it ran just as well as it did with AC. The 4-position reverse unit works just like it does with AC. You hear the coil hum a little bit. The solenoids on DC sometimes can get hot because the alternating current helps to keep the solenoid kind of cool, if you will, but not necessarily to the point of it being a problem. I think in some of the operating cars, like the operating cabooses, they can tend to overheat if run on DC, but that's a whole nother story. Let's see this one go. As I mentioned, the KW doesn't have an on-off switch, so I'm going to plug it into the wall. If you'll bear with me for a second while I do that, and we'll get the show on the road, or should I say on the tracks. There we go. Off she goes. We're pulling about 11 volts at the railhead, and she moves along rather well with even just that much. With more power, it can take off very quickly. It's a good smoker, as you can see. Does that part of this job really well. I'm going to send it now up the incline, but at a slow rate of speed, because these big engines on the trestles want to be careful of that. But you notice that nice, smooth, steady power. And that's a good sign. No problems there. Here she comes back down onto the lower loop again, and I've got to remember this switch before it's too late. This is a 1949 DC 332, now back on the high rails of S-Gauge. Maybe I'll open it up just a little bit this time so you get an idea of what it's like at more than 11 volts. There she goes, coming right at us. Oh man, I'll tell you, you gotta watch these twisty bits. But there she goes. Whoa. Which is smooth, steady, strong, smooth, and smoky. Just how I like them, and I'm sure you do as well. So thanks so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. If you'd like more information on my services, go to precisionflyerrepairs.com. And in the meantime, until next time, be well and have fun running your trains.